And hit record, and it's Tuesday, August 4th. I'm here with Michelle Charles, and today we're going to be talking about categories of inefficiencies. And before I do that, I wanted to address a few reminders that we've touched on in the past. I'm going to share my screen here. First of all is we have a new application called Mac Manage, and this replaces the old self-service application. I actually, in my support menu, renamed Mac Manage Self-Service, which is something you could do. You don't have to do. And now my self-service, my support menu won't close because I dragged it from one window to another. Yeah, I'm gonna quit it. Okay, reopen it. So Mac Manage. So here's Mac Manage. This is what it looks like, and it's a very basic concept. There are things in here that are completely safe for anyone on this device to run. It will only present what works on a machine or what's safe to run. You can see here I already have Teams installed, so it's grayed out. Same with OneDrive. But if I wanted to install Backup and Sync, I could install that, or Skype, which I don't recommend, but I think we've had several requests for Skype. Skype is on end of life, on its way out. Doesn't work well on the Mac, but if you absolutely positively have to use it, then you can install it here. So that's Mac Manage. There's some different categories they can switch between, and you can search. So it's very similar to self-service. And most of the time, our team will reference, please open Mac Manage or self-service, go here and X, Y, and Z, but you're certainly free to look around and explore and ask questions. So I'm going to close that. And then the last thing I wanted to reiterate is actually two things in VisionBot is one, we now show whether a machine is running endpoint protection. In most cases, our clients are running Malwarebytes. Some clients also run a combination of others like SentinelOne, Carbon Black, OpenDNS. Sometimes they run multiple. And the challenge with these applications up until now is that they don't show up as applications. Some of them do, but not many of them, because they run in the background. So it's very difficult for us to know at a glance if your machine is running something like Malwarebytes or not without doing a lot more digging and a lot more research. So this exposes it very quickly. You can see it. If your computers are not encrypted, are not running endpoint protection, or do not have all users enabled for File Vault, please let us know. We're working through cleaning up the security section as much as possible, but we have thousands of devices, and sometimes it takes some coordination between us and our primary contacts to make that happen. And then the last reminder related to VisionBot, because we've had a lot of questions as people work from home, as people have computers, in some cases sitting in the office not being used. And if they're not being used, certainly I would recommend, even if it's an iMac, going to the office, getting it and taking it home. It's not that much effort. I know it's not as portable as a notebook, but an iMac is pretty easy to move. But if you're really not using that machine, consider going into VisionBot and either generating a report of all your devices, or you could go into the Recycle tab, see all of your old devices. If some are unknown, if the age is unknown, contact us. We can either update the age or help explain why we don't know the age. And from here, when you generate a report, you can download a file, CSV file, and then you can go to Second Life Mac and you can upload that file. And that will allow you to get a quote from Second Life Mac on what they would pay for these old devices. So rather than have them sit in your office collecting dust, you could actually get money back for them and use that money towards some new technology. Okay, so I'm going to close Safari and let's get into Keynote. And so this is, Michelle, can you see my screen? Just make
I
sure.
can, yeah.
Okay. So this is a workshop that Apple recently presented, and let me get my notes over here. So I must admit, I have not presented this workshop. In fact, the goal here is just to kind of get this out as something to think about, get this information out to our primary contacts, so that they can kind of think about how they use technology in their office, and maybe how you're using technology now that you've left the office and are working remotely. The key takeaways here are Apple has identified these 5 categories where most businesses, large and small, typically are inefficient, and they could be more efficient. And a lot of this has to do with moving from paper to digital. And a lot of this really these are pieces that offices have already. They just need some help making the changes to make everything work more efficiently, or they need to change habits. And that's the hard part, but that's also great, that if all it takes is changing habits to be more efficient, then we can all certainly achieve that. So let me just run through this, and I'm not going to go into, Apple did, it was a half-day workshop. So I'm only going to take, 15, 20 minutes to run through this. And the takeaway, once again, is think about how you use technology in your office and how this might apply to you, and reach out to us and we can help you maybe correct some of these inefficiencies. So the first big one, of course, is paper. And following this workshop, typically I would print out my notes for this presentation, and I decided I'm going to try to follow the advice and the inefficiency mandate, and I pulled my notes up on my iPad. So I have my iPad here as a notes taking device, and to be fair, it works the same as paper, except it's just not a habit I have. I still have a habit of using paper and writing and pen and paper, although sometimes I can't read my own notes, so I should probably start using the iPad more. So I'm going to try to do that. So paper, and the problem with paper, these are just some really high level summaries of the problems with paper, but it has no data validation, meaning you can't verify if what is on paper is accurate or not. Yes, you could scan it in. Yes, you could convert it into some OCR and do some digitizing, but that's a lot of effort. The paper sitting on your desk, you can't search it, can't validate it. In fact, that's the second topic here. It's not searchable. It's certainly not secure. Obviously, it's secure in the sense that you can see it and you can keep track of it, but it's also easy to lose. Promotes double handling. As soon as you print out a copy, how many people in your organization are printing out that same copy in order to work on something? And then it must be distributed, must be stored, must be destroyed, and or lost, which is typically what happens. So anytime you touch paper in your office, think about, could that be digitized, or could it never become paper in the first place? Just like my example of my notes. Oftentimes I have notes in my notes document on my Mac, accessible on my iPhone, accessible on my iPad. So it's kind of just a comfort level for me to print them out so I can have them in front of me, in case I can't juggle multiple screens or the battery dies or something like that. But in reality, I plug my iPad in so it won't go to sleep. It's sitting right here. I have notes. I can make edits. I just need to get comfortable with that. So that's one example. If you see an example in your office where you're still using paper, talk to us. And one more good example of that is I learned way too late that one of our clients was printing out invoices only to either put them in the mail or in some cases fax them to their clients. And today, there's really no reason to be printing out invoices. Those can be sent in email as links. Those can be sent in email as PDFs. And their pushback was, well, the application we're using won't allow us to create a PDF. And that was a misconception because every single application on Mac OS will allow you to create a PDF. So keep that in mind. Okay, the next one is go to location. And this is not something that resonates with us directly, although more so when we were working in the field. So anytime you have to send somebody to a location, how efficient is that? There could be time and response delays. Of course, there are transportation costs. I mean, in our industry, when we have to, as they say, roll a truck or send somebody on site, that's a whole nother level of cost as opposed to us helping someone on the phone or even remoting into their computer, because there's travel cost, time required to get there, time required to get back. And you have to consider that. And a lot of people are just doing business as they always have, and they're not considering the fact that maybe they could be more efficient. I'll give you one quick story of Uber efficiency, and this is an Apple story. So I wanted to get an Apple Watch for my son. Michelle, Colin, and he's going to run at college in the fall. So I wanted to give him as a graduation gift an Apple Watch. But there are so many options with the Apple Watch, and I didn't want to just buy one and give it to him. I wanted him to help pick out the colors and the style and things, the lower level version. But so we sat down on his birthday. So it was kind of / birthday graduation gift. We sat down, we looked at the watch options, we decided what we wanted, and it said it would be delivered in a couple weeks. So I said, okay, great. You'll get it in a couple weeks. And then he left, and I went to my desk to actually order the Apple Watch. And as I was ordering, it gave me the option of either picking it up at the store locally rather than waiting 2 weeks, or it said they could deliver it. I think it was $9. For $9 they could deliver it. And for me to go to North Michigan Avenue, or actually Michigan Avenue because they changed locations, the closest store to where I live and work, it would probably take me, what do you think, Michelle, at least a half an hour, maybe realistically an hour to get in, get what I needed to come out. And I'm like, you know what, $9, I can have it today. I can give it to him on his birthday. I'll just do that. So I placed the order at like 10 till 2. And 10 minutes after 2, I have the watch. So within 20 minutes, I had the watch. In fact, when they rang the doorbell to say delivery, I was like, delivery? Who is this? Like, I literally just bought the watch less than 20 minutes ago. And sure enough, it was, trying to remember now, Apple used a delivery service, and the delivery person must have been at the store when I placed the order. The order immediately notified the store immediately notified the delivery person who brought it to me. And I'm not saying we all need that level of efficiency, but that was pretty impressive. Amazing. In fact, when the package showed up, my wife's like, "What is that?" And I'm like, "Well, this is the Apple Watch I just bought." She's like, "I just watched you buy that. There's no way that's the Apple Watch you just bought." She thought I had like stashed it somewhere previously. I'm like, "No, this is the one I just bought." And one more thing to consider, because that's Apple, and we all know we're not Apple, and we don't have the resources that Apple has. But one of the big takeaways from this workshop is don't try to overhaul your entire way of doing business. Just look for those little wins. Like, what is one thing you could do to improve your workflow? And if that means getting something to someone more quickly, it makes the customer happy, or is more efficient for everyone, then that's a huge win. And so look for those small incremental changes that you can make. Okay, the next category is static data. And static data could be outdated information. A good example of this is before we had VisionBot, most everything computer technology, equipment related, was in an Excel sheet or a spreadsheet. The problem with that is as soon as we entered everything into the spreadsheet, it became nearly useless within a couple days, because there's so many things changing on a day-to-day basis. There are app updates, there are OS updates. The machine continues to age, the battery changes, the hard drive changes, or how much data is on the hard drive. So we could capture in a spreadsheet a snapshot in time, but it was static data, and it was kind of useless to us. So when we built VisionBot, and we've had it for many years now, it is still a challenge to change those habits. I still sometimes get people asking me for that spreadsheet, and that's why we integrated. I showed you the example of how you could download data to send it to Second Life Mac to get a quote. Well, you can download that, turn that data into a spreadsheet, and get that snapshot in time anytime you want. But just keep in mind, things will continue to change after you download that. And your best resource is VisionBot. So anytime you have stuff stuck in a spreadsheet that's not getting updated, think about that. Think about the extra processing time. In an ideal world, rather than me asking you to download a spreadsheet and send it to Second Life Mac, who then produces a quote, I would love to just have an API call to Second Life Mac to show you the current status of the value of your Mac in VisionBot. And we've talked about that, and that's something that we would like to deliver. Second Life Mac is working on making some changes to allow us to do that. I have no idea if that will happen in the next few months or the next few years, but that's where we want to get to. So I'm just going to go down the list here. Decreased collaboration. So the other thing is, anytime you have static data, it can be difficult to collaborate on. Now, Google has made it easier with spreadsheets where you can get multiple people into one document and collaborate. But once again, that may be a snapshot in time. So you might be better off collaborating on live data as opposed to spreadsheet data. And then storage and distribution cost. You have to store that data. You have to distribute that data. And that could take time. That could take resources. That could be costing you money that you don't need to be spending. So if you have static data, let us know. We can figure out what to do about it to help make it not static, I guess. I'm going to get some better examples for all of these categories in the next presentation, not next week, but as this evolves. As I mentioned, this is the first time I've kind of tried to regurgitate what I learned. Let's see, the penultimate category here is single-use device. And what that means is, let's see what some of the examples are. Some of the examples are, Apple did some research and they discovered that a lot of people, although everyone that Apple did the study on has an iPhone, not everyone used the device to its maximum capability, meaning they used it as a phone. They used it, I'm talking about business owners and people working for small business. They used it as a phone. They used it occasionally or mostly for messaging, friends, occasionally coworkers. And then, of course, they might use it for social media. But when it comes to business apps, very few are taking advantage of the business apps that can be installed and integrated into a workflow on an iPhone or on an iPad. So I know we gave a presentation a couple weeks ago on Ignite. Ignite is a cloud file storage solution. And Ignite has an app for iPhone and iPad that makes it very convenient for people to browse data on the web, retrieve data, and upload data. And I know we're all accustomed to, when I get back to my computer, I'm going to do that. But if we can break our habits and rethink things, we could access that information from our phone, from our iPad, and yes, of course, from our Mac. But we can often do it more quickly if we're using an app that's dedicated to that task. So a single-use device is really a device that you only use for a single use. I mean, the absolute worst or historic example of this is the fax machine. I mean, that can only do one thing, right? And it will always only do one thing. And in fact, the worst part about that is you would take paper and you would literally digitize it, send it, and convert it back to paper. in order to view it. I read a story years ago about how the fax machine set us back from a technological and efficiency standpoint, like 20 years, because it took off like wildfire. And then it took a while to extract ourselves from the fax machine. I hope no one is still using a fax machine. But the point here is think about your devices and what you do with them. We're all accustomed to doing multiple things with our computer, but we may not be thinking about how to do multiple things, tasks, with our phone or our iPads. And the iPad Pro that I have been using more and more and breaking those habits. And it is amazing how much more efficient I can be when I have a larger screen. It's it's like the iPhone, but with a larger screen. It's very fast. It's very battery efficient. So that's something to consider. Looking at the list here, multiple costs, extra processing, decreased data sharing. Let's see, I'm trying to remember exactly what all of these really mean, but the idea is a single-use device. Think about, can you use that device in multiple ways for multiple systems, for multiple workflows to increase, how you share things or how you get access to data. Does that make sense, Michelle? I know it's kind of vague because I'm looking at these bullet points and not quite translating them very well.
Yeah.
Oh, let me go the other way. Okay, and then the last area is restricted access. And restricted access is really just when your team doesn't have access to what they need to do their job. So restricted access can be good from a security standpoint. We want only people authorized to have access to certain data to have that access. But it can also be inefficient when people who should have access and need access don't. And that's, as an example, if we have static data that can't be shared, then what do? We make a paper copy of it. Or we send a copy through email as an attachment. Now we've got multiple copies. There's a time delay in getting that information to people. It increases rework because now somebody says, oh, well, I want to make an edit to this document. Maybe they do make an edit, but that's not the master document. That's not the core. That's not the document that everyone should be working off of. So that causes confusion, that raises cost, and it basically isolates the data. And believe me, we are all struggling with this. I know, Michelle, you and I have worked on things where, we started off with good intentions. We're like, we're going to put this in this shared cloud document area where we can all work on it together. And then like 6 months later, I'm like, I can't find that. Can you find it? And somehow I have a copy of it that was my copy, not the copy we were working on together. And we've gone through that a couple of times. So I know it can be challenging, but it also can work. I mean, I think a good example of that is we have a document, Michelle, that you update every Monday for the team. And now that I know where that lives, I can go there and I can make edits. And what I'm making edits to is the very document that you update every Monday.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a whole lot more efficient than you and I passing a document back and forth. So that's just one small example of how you could change your workflow and start to think of putting things in the cloud where you give the right people the right access, you reduce the paper, you reduce the time it takes to make those changes, to deliver those documents. And in an ideal world, I'm thinking again of that document you put together, Michelle. If we could get to a point where that data just flows into that document, that would be the ultimate, because then, one, we wouldn't be spending time Monday we're essentially taking static data and putting it into a static document, right? Mm-hmm. So if we could automate that, we would have that data at all times. And that's just something that we have not made a priority, or we have not decided it's worth the investment. But one of the things I learned from this workshop is sometimes you need to sit down and calculate how much time you are spending creating these documents, these static documents, And would it be worth taking some money and investing it in the automation to eliminate that time? And sometimes it can be. And that, once again, is a big reason why VisionBot was born, because there's so much of this information here that we needed to be up to date at all times. I'm gonna go to my computer again. We needed to be up to date at all times. We needed to be accurate. We needed to share this information with clients. I mean, this is a great example of just taking multiple inefficiencies and improving them and continuing to improve them. I'm not saying it's done or perfect. It probably never will be. But this is really replacing an old-fashioned spreadsheet with some dynamic information that we can then search on, we can reorganize, we can categorize, we can get alerted to information that we simply could not do with a spreadsheet. So that summarizes the 5 categories of inefficiencies, and I'll continue to refine this, and we're going to be talking about this with our team so that we all internally can help identify inefficiencies that we see at our client locations. And of course, we'll be leaning on our primary contacts to help us evaluate if what we're seeing is something that can be improved. And certainly, we are relying on our primary contacts to help us identify some of these areas that we may not even be privy to. Like, there certainly are things going on in organizations with technology or lack of technology when it comes to paper that we just don't know about. And if we did know about it, I'm sure we could work together to use existing tools to improve things, or possibly introduce a new tool if that's what it takes. So, Michelle, does that sound good? Any questions?
No questions.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for joining me. Thank you, everyone. We'll get this posted very soon. Have a great week. We'll see you next week. Thanks.
Thanks.